You love your husband, but lately it seems like you lie down next to him in bed and still feel completely alone. You pass each other in the kitchen and find that you have nothing to say. You sit next to him on the couch, but feel like there's this huge gap that you can't seem to close. And the loneliest part of all is that it feels like you're the only one who really notices or cares about closing it. And what most women don't realize is that what they start doing next is actually making the distance worse rather than actually helping them get the closeness that they desire. So stick with me here because what I'm going to show you next is not about communication scripts or date nights or the same old advice that you find out there. It's something much, much more powerful. And here's the thing that almost nobody talks about. The very thing that women start doing once they start to feel that distance actually makes the distance worse. Not because they're doing anything wrong, but because loneliness creates a pattern, a very understandable, very normal, very human pattern, but one that quietly pulls you away from the one thing that could actually help. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Here's what I've seen in marriages time and time again: loneliness quietly but destructively erodes a relationship and one's relationship with themselves as well. At first, it can often feel like sadness, like I miss him or I miss how we used to laugh and play together. And then it can turn into confusion. How did we even get here? Does he even notice? And then it can turn into resentment. Why does it feel like I'm the only one who really cares? And why does it feel like I'm the only one who's trying? And then, because you love him and you're a thoughtful woman, that turns into analysis. You start to become hyper aware of him. You start to notice more and more his moods and how distant he's being with you, what he is and what he's not doing. You start to wonder in your head, is it stress from work? Is he distracted? Is this just how marriage is after years and years together? Is something wrong with him? Is something wrong with us? Or is something wrong with me? You're essentially trying to diagnose the problem so that you can fix it, which is completely understandable. And of course, that impulse comes from care and love, which is beautiful. But often that comes with a price. When all of your attention lives in him, his moods, his patterns, his walls, his responses to you, then you slowly start to drift away from yourself. Your nervous system stays on edge, constantly searching, wanting to feel safe and secure within your relationship. Love begins to feel like something that you're waiting for rather than something that you're living together. And without even realizing it, you start looking for the solution in the one place that you have the least amount of power. Now, before I show you where you actually have a lot of power, I want to tell you about a wife I worked with who found this the hard way. I worked with a wife who I'll call Sarah, who had been married for 11 years, and she said that her husband was a good man and they had a good life together. But night after night, she would see him go and sit and scrolling on his phone and just so disconnected and shut down from her and from the relationship, it felt like. And she would run this same quiet loop in her head night after night. Is he unhappy? Is it me? Should I say something? Should I wait? What should I do? She had been waiting for him to reconnect at this point for 2 years. And meanwhile, while she had been so focused on reading him and worrying about their relationship, she had completely disconnected from herself. When I asked her, what if the distance that you're feeling from him is partly the distance that you're feeling from yourself? She said that she recognized that that was true. And when she recognized that, everything started to shift from there. Waiting for him to close the gap is not patience. It's a quiet surrender of your own power. You cannot control what he does or doesn't do, but you have complete authority over you and what you do. And so the path back to connection is within your grasp right now, today. Not because you're going to fix him, but because you have a voice. You have a heart that's been whispering things that have gone unsaid for a long time. And you have a self that's been waiting not only for him to show up, but for you to show up. And the most powerful, tender, courageous thing you can do in a marriage that's grown cold is to be a little bit vulnerable. Because when your marriage feels distant and lonely, it hurts. And I know that the word vulnerable might make you tighten up a little bit. Because when you've felt unseen and disconnected for a long time, the thought of opening up and not being met or feeling rejected is terrified. And so we protect ourselves by staying quiet, getting busy, and moving on. But then slowly, without meaning to, both people end up hiding behind their walls, waiting for the other person to come out first. And in just a minute, I'm going to show you exactly what that looks like because it's often a lot smaller and softer than you might think. Marriages don't usually go cold overnight or because of one big catastrophic event. It's often very gradual, so gradual that they don't even know how they got there. But it's often two people that stop telling each other the small, true things of everyday life, like I miss you or I thought of you today. And I'm not talking about grand romantic gestures or big, hard conversations with ultimatums and a final agenda. I'm talking about soft, honest truths that are incredibly powerful. So, first, let me tell you what vulnerability does not look like. It does not look like having another dreaded, we need to talk conversation or pouring out years of resentment that have built up over time, because those things can actually overwhelm a disconnected dynamic even more. What vulnerability does look like is much more soft and simple. It looks like walking by him in the kitchen and saying, I saw something that made me think of you today. It looks like when you're lying in bed together, saying, I've missed you lately, not as a complaint and not with an expectation built in at the end, but just as your truth, a very simple way of honoring what's your true, real emotional experience and showing him your inner world. And here's what I want you to notice about these examples: they're giving freely, not with attached expectations or demands to have those things returned to you, and not as a test to see how he responds, but as a way of honoring your truth and as a way of reclaiming your voice. Softness and courage together make one of the most magnetic combinations that there are, because you're not asking him to change. You're simply changing what you're bringing into the space between you. You're not just a wife waiting to be chosen again. You're a woman who chooses herself. And in doing so, begins choosing her marriage again right now in this exact season. If your marriage feels lonely right now, you're not broken, you're not failing, and your husband is likely not a villain. You're just two people who have drifted apart, which is common and happens a lot in marriages over time when life gets busy and vulnerability starts to feel like too much of a risk. The invitation today isn't to try to fix everything at once. It's simply just this: to say one true, tender thing this week without expectations, without an agenda, and without trying to weigh how he might respond to see if it's worth it. Because your truth is already worth it. The best love stories are not about two perfect people, it's about the brave people. Not brave in a big dramatic sense, but brave in a quiet sense. The woman who reached out first, the woman who said the true thing that was in her heart, the woman who softened when hardening and hiding behind a wall might have felt so much easier. That courage has always been inside of you. So the invitation today is to let that courage speak. You're not waiting for him to change first. You're waiting for you to come home to yourself. And if you're listening to this and feeling stuck within your relationship, I'm offering free one on one clarity calls this week. You can get in touch with me directly. The link to get in touch with me is in the description, and I'd love to support you. And if this video spoke to something that you've been quietly carrying on your own, feel free to leave a comment. You deserve to be seen, even if it's here. And if you want to know the real reason why you feel lonely in your marriage, watch this next video up next.